When I saw my daughter-in-law standing at the top of the stairs in my wedding dress, something inside me went very still. Not anger, not yet. Just a kind of silence, like the moment before a storm breaks. The lace looked tighter around her waist than it ever had on mine, and the pearls I'd stitched by hand years ago caught the morning light like tiny eyes. She smiled down at me, so innocent, so pleased with herself, as though she were doing me a favor by wearing it. "I hope you don't mind," she said, twirling slowly. It was just hanging there in that old cedar chest. I thought, why not give it a new story? That was the day I realized my home was no longer entirely mine. Before all that, my life had been peaceful in its small, predictable ways. I lived in the same two-story house my late husband, Thomas, built with his own hands 38 years ago. The kind of place that creaks in the right spots and smells like wood polish and rosemary from the garden. Every morning I made tea, strong, black, with just a drop of honey. I'd sit by the window and watch the neighborhood dogs chase each other down the cul-de-sac while the sun slid through the sycamores. My son, Daniel, would stop by once or twice a week for dinner. He'd bring me groceries, ask about the plumbing, and promise to fix the porch light. He never did, but I didn't mind. Daniel was quiet, a gentle boy who'd grown into a cautious man. After his father passed, he became my anchor, the one reason I didn't feel entirely alone. So when he told me he'd met someone special, I smiled and said all the right things. "She makes me happy, Ma," he said over the phone one night. "You'll like her. She's strong. Knows what she wants. Strong. Knows what she wants?" I should have paid more attention to those words. Her name was Lila. She had the kind of beauty that photographs well, all symmetrical features and expensive perfume. The first time I met her, she brought a bottle of imported wine and a bouquet of lilies so fragrant they made my head spin. She called me Mrs. Warren even though I told her to call me Eleanor. Her voice was syrupy sweet, but her eyes were sharp, the kind that scan a room before you do. Dinner that night was awkward in small, polite ways. Lila laughed too loudly at Daniel's jokes, pushed her chair too close to his, and complimented every dish I made. Even the salad she didn't touch. I noticed the way she looked around my living room, pausing at the framed photographs. Her gaze lingering a little too long on the china cabinet. When they left that evening, Daniel hugged me and whispered, "She's nervous." "Ma, don't read too much into it." I wanted to believe him. So I did. They got engaged a few months later. The wedding was small, a courthouse affair followed by lunch at a nearby restaurant. I wasn't invited to the ceremony itself. Daniel said they wanted to keep it simple. Lila claimed her parents couldn't travel, so it felt more intimate this way. Still, I cooked a meal that night, waiting for them to stop by after their vows. They didn't. The roast went cold on the counter and the house felt heavier than usual. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that I saw them again. They arrived together, hands entwined, smiling as though nothing had changed. "We're staying for a few days," Daniel said, putting his suitcase down in the hallway. "Our lease isn't ready yet." "A few days," I repeated, nodding. Those few days turned into a few weeks. At first, it was small things. Lila rearranged the spice rack, alphabetically, she said, because it made more sense. She took down the old family portraits from the hallway, replacing them with framed prints she'd ordered online. She even switched out the living room curtains for lighter ones because the old ones made the room too dark. I told myself she was just nesting. Newlyweds do that. But there was something about the way she moved through my home, decisive, proprietary, that made me uneasy. One morning, I came downstairs to find her at the dining table with a stack of my old photo albums spread out before her. She was flipping through pictures of my wedding day, me in that same lace gown, Thomas beside me, smiling that quiet smile that never showed his teeth. "You looked so young," she said, not looking up. "That dress is timeless. It'd be perfect for a vow renewal someday." I laughed lightly, though I didn't find it funny. It's been in the cedar chest for decades. I doubt it even fits anyone anymore. Her eyes met mine then, a flicker of amusement. Or was it challenge? "Oh, I wouldn't be so sure." That was the first time I felt the ground shift. The day of the anniversary party, my late husband's birthday, the one I always hosted quietly. Everything changed. I'd been in the kitchen, icing a cake when Daniel called out from upstairs. "Ma, you might want to see this." I wiped my hands on a towel and walked toward the staircase. And there she was. Lila stood at the top, framed by the soft light from the hallway, wearing my wedding dress. The same lace sleeves, the same pearl buttons, even the little tear in the hem I'd stitched decades ago. Her hair was pinned up with my old comb, the one Thomas bought me on our honeymoon. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The air seemed to thicken. The sound of the clock in the hallway grew louder. "I hope you don't mind," she said again, her smile unbothered. "I found it while organizing the guest room closet. It just felt right." I looked at Daniel, expecting him to stop her, to say something, but he just stood there, awkward, silent. Something inside me cracked that day. Not in anger, but in disbelief. The quiet realization that my home, my memories, my history, were being rewritten before my eyes. That night, after they went out to dinner, I went to the cedar chest. The rest of my keepsakes, the letters, the jewelry box, the silk gloves, were gone. Only a faint trace of lavender sachet remained. That was when I understood. She wasn't just borrowing space. She was claiming it. And if I didn't do something soon, I'd lose everything Thomas and I had built together. After that night, sleep became a stranger. I lay awake listening to the soft rhythm of their footsteps down the hall, her laughter slipping under the door, her perfume clinging to the air like something invasive. By morning, I'd already decided I wasn't going to make a scene. I'd wait, observe. I'd learned long ago that people like Lila reveal themselves if you give them enough space to talk. A week later, I came home from the grocery store and noticed the faint scent of paint. My living room walls, once a soft buttercream yellow, were now an icy gray. The curtains I'd picked with Thomas were gone, replaced with sheer panels that barely covered the windows. "Do you like it?" Lila asked, stepping back to admire her work. She had a paint roller in one hand, a glass of red wine in the other. I thought this color might modernize the place a bit. "You painted my walls?" I asked quietly. "Ours," she corrected, not looking at me. "Daniel said it was okay." I turned to my son, who was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. He looked up briefly, guilt flickering across his face. "It's just paint, Ma. We can always change it back." But we both knew he wouldn't. That was how it began. One small thing after another. My kitchen towels went missing. The old ceramic dishes Thomas and I bought in Italy were replaced with sleek white plates. Even my teacups disappeared, replaced by mugs that said things like "Live, Laugh, Love." I told myself these were harmless changes. But inside I felt a growing unease, a quiet erosion I couldn't quite name. One afternoon I went to the attic to retrieve a box of winter clothes. When I opened the cedar chest, the same one that once held my wedding dress, I found it empty. Completely empty. Not even the sachet remained. "Lila!" I called down the stairs, my voice trembling just slightly. She appeared at the bottom, hair tied in a silk scarf, holding a cup of coffee as if she'd been waiting for me to find out. "Yes, Eleanor?" she said sweetly. "The cedar chest? Where are the things that were inside?" "Oh, those?" She shrugged. Most of it was too old. I donated a few items to Goodwill. "Hope that's okay." My heart stopped. "You what?" She blinked innocently. "Daniel said it was all sentimental clutter. He thought it'd be good for you to declutter." I couldn't speak. I just turned and walked back into my room, the sound of my pulse roaring in my ears. That night, I waited for Daniel to come home from work. When he finally did, I met him in the hallway. "Did you tell her to throw away my things?" I asked. He hesitated. "She said they were falling apart, Ma. You never even opened that chest. She was just trying to help." "Help?" I repeated softly. "By erasing my life?" He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You're overreacting. Lila's just trying to make the house comfortable for everyone." I wanted to scream, but instead I whispered, For everyone, or for herself? He didn't answer. That was when I realized something deeper was happening. Lila wasn't just moving in, she was moving me out. A few nights later, I overheard them talking in the living room. My bedroom door was cracked open, and their voices carried easily through the quiet. She doesn't need this big house, Lila was saying. It's too much for her to handle. We could take care of it, keep it in the family. It's her home, Daniel murmured. She's not ready to move. Then help her get ready, she said softly, dangerously. You're her son. She trusts you. I felt cold all over. That was the moment I stopped being naive. The next morning, I made breakfast as usual. Eggs, toast, and tea. Lila came down wearing one of my old cardigans. That looks familiar, I said. Oh. She smiled, tugging at the sleeve. It was hanging in the laundry room. I thought it was Daniel's. It's so comfy. I smiled tightly. You wear it well. It was then I decided to start documenting everything. Not because I planned to go to war, not yet, but because I wanted to be ready if I needed proof. So I began writing things down, dates, small changes, snippets of conversation. I took pictures of my missing furniture, my altered walls, even the empty cedar chest. It made me feel less helpless, like I was reclaiming a sliver of control. But control is a fragile illusion. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from the Homeowners Association addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Daniel Warren, not Eleanor Warren. When I asked Lila about it, she laughed. Oh, that's just paperwork. We had to update some contact info. You know how these forms are. I took the envelope and checked the return address. It wasn't the HOA. It was the county property office. And the words title update jumped out at me. That night, after they went to bed, I sat at my desk and opened the county website. My hands trembled as I typed in the property parcel number. What I saw nearly took my breath away. The property, my home, was listed under Daniel and Lila Warren. My name wasn't there anymore. For a long time, I just stared at the screen. My mind refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. Then, slowly, it sank in. They hadn't just taken over the house. They had taken it from me. I sat in the dark for hours that night, the blue glow of the monitor reflecting off my tears. At some point, I whispered into the stillness, Thomas, what would you have done? The silence that followed felt like an answer, because I knew what I had to do next. If Lila thought she could erase me quietly, she was about to learn that I may be old, but I'm not invisible. And no one unsteals a woman's life while she's still breathing. I didn't confront them right away. Rage has a heat that burns quick and bright, but I needed the kind that burns slow. The kind that lasts, so I waited. I smiled at breakfast, made polite conversation at dinner, and even let Lila drag me along to a family brunch where she introduced herself as the lady of the house. I watched. I listened and I planned. One morning, while they were out shopping for home decor, I called the county clerk's office. My voice shook as I asked to confirm the property title. Yes, ma'am, the woman on the line said, clicking keys. It shows ownership transferred 3 weeks ago. Signed by Eleanor Warren, witnessed and notarized. My heart stopped. That's not possible, I said. I never signed anything. Are you sure? She asked. We have your signature on file. I'm sure, I whispered. Would you like me to email you the scanned document? Yes, I said, gripping the phone tighter. When the file came through, I opened it slowly. At the bottom of the page, in neat, looping cursive, was my signature. Except, it wasn't mine. The capital E was wrong. Too sharp, too slanted. And I never looped the R in Warren. Someone had forged my name. I printed the document and placed it in a manila folder. My hands trembled as I turned off the printer, the hum still echoing in my ears. A memory flashed, of Lila hovering near my study weeks ago, saying she needed to photocopy something. My checkbook had gone missing for a day around the same time. It all made sense now. She had forged my signature, transferred my house, and done it all under the illusion of being a helpful daughter-in-law. And Daniel, my own son, had either helped her or let it happen. The betrayal was so heavy it felt like a physical thing sitting on my chest. That evening, I waited until Daniel came home from work. Lila was still out with friends. He poured himself a drink, the sound of ice clinking in the glass filling the silence. "Daniel," I said quietly, "we need to talk." He looked at me over the rim of his glass. "What about?" "The house." He froze, the color draining slightly from his face. "What about it?" "I checked the records today. It's not in my name anymore." He set the glass down too hard, the liquid sloshing over the edge. "Ma, please don't make this into a—" "You forged my signature," I said, my voice breaking. He looked away. "It wasn't like that." "Then how was it?" I demanded. He rubbed his face, sighing heavily. "Lila said it was just a formality. She said you were thinking of transferring it eventually, so we could handle taxes and upkeep. She even showed me the paper. I thought you'd signed it." I felt tears sting my eyes. "You didn't even ask me?" He shook his head. "I trusted her. I thought she'd talk to you." I turned away, swallowing the lump in my throat. "You trusted your wife more than your own mother." He didn't answer. And in that silence, I realized something terrible. Daniel wasn't just a bystander. He was a man who wanted peace more than truth. And Lila knew exactly how to use that. That night, I packed a small bag and went to stay at my friend Margaret's house. She lived 2 streets over and had been my neighbor for 30 years. When she opened the door, she took one look at my face and pulled me into her arms. "What happened?" she asked softly. "Everything," I whispered. "I think I've lost everything." We sat at her kitchen table until midnight. I showed her the papers, explained what had happened. She listened quietly, her brow furrowed. Finally, she said, "You need a lawyer." "I don't want a lawsuit," I murmured. "I just want my home back." "Sometimes," she said gently, "you have to fight to keep what's yours." The next day, I went to the police station. The young officer at the desk listened, took notes, and told me it was a civil matter. "Forgery is hard to prove," he said apologetically. "Especially if your son's name is on the deed now." "Even if I never signed it?" He nodded. "You'll need legal representation." So I found a lawyer, a woman named Carla who specialized in elder property fraud. She had kind eyes and a sharp tongue. After reviewing the documents, she looked up at me and said, "This was deliberate, but we'll get it back." I wanted to believe her. When I returned home that evening to collect more of my things, Lila was in the kitchen, humming. She looked up and smiled. "Oh, I didn't expect you back so soon. How was your little getaway?" I ignored her tone. "I came for a few belongings." She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. "You know, Eleanor, maybe it's time you thought about moving somewhere more manageable. Daniel and I can take care of this place. You'd be more comfortable at a smaller apartment or, what do they call it? Assisted living." I froze. "Are you throwing me out of my own house?" She tilted her head. "Our house," she corrected smoothly. "Legally speaking." I stared at her. Really stared. At the smoothness of her skin, the calmness of her eyes, the complete absence of guilt. And then, for the first time, I saw what she truly was. Not just manipulative, but dangerous in her composure. "You think you've won," I said softly. She smiled, brushing imaginary dust from her sleeve. "I already have." When I walked out that door, the late autumn air felt sharp and clean. I remember thinking, let her think she's won, because I was going to make sure the world saw who she really was. And when I took back my home, I wouldn't just have a house. I'd have my dignity, and proof that you can't bury a woman's truth under legal paper. It's strange how quickly word travels in a small town, faster than the wind, sharper than rumor. Within days, everyone knew that my daughter-in-law had forged the deed to my house. The whispers followed her wherever she went. The grocery store, the salon, even the church pews she once sat in with her chin lifted high. I didn't revel in it. If anything, I pitied her. But there was a quiet justice in watching truth stand on its own feet. No shouting, no revenge, just the slow, heavy silence that comes when people realize what you've done and who you truly are. Lila moved out the same week the court ruling was finalized. Daniel helped her pack. I didn't interfere. From the kitchen window, I could see them loading boxes into her car. She looked smaller somehow, her usual confidence replaced by something brittle. When she turned and saw me at the window, she hesitated. For a fleeting moment, I thought she might come over, maybe to apologize, maybe to curse me. But she didn't. She just got in her car and drove away. The sound of the engine fading down the street felt like the final note of a long, painful song. Daniel stayed behind. For a while, he wandered the house like a ghost, touching the walls, the photo frames, the kitchen counter where his father used to sit with the morning paper. I didn't know what she was capable of, he said one evening, standing in the living room. I know, I said softly. He turned to me. You warned me, didn't you? I just didn't want to hear it. Love makes us blind, I replied. But it doesn't have to make us foolish forever. He gave a small, broken smile. What happens now? Now, I said, setting down my teacup, we rebuild. Not the house. Our trust. Over the next few weeks, the house began to feel like home again. I took my time restoring each corner that Lila had claimed, the floral curtains she'd replaced with modern blinds, the antique dishes she'd boxed away. One afternoon, as I dusted the mantel, I found a photo I hadn't seen in years. Thomas holding Daniel as a toddler, both laughing so hard the picture was slightly blurred. I smiled and placed it back where it belonged. That night, Daniel came home from work and joined me for dinner, something he hadn't done in months. We ate quietly at first, the clinking of silverware filling the space where anger used to sit. Halfway through the meal, he looked up. Mom, he said, do you think people can change? I thought about it for a moment. I think people can learn, I said. Change is a choice. But learning, that happens whether we want it or not, he nodded slowly. I've learned a lot. I know you have, I said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. The next Sunday, I went back to church. I hadn't been there since everything began. I half expected stares, pity, or gossip. But instead, I was met with quiet nods and kind smiles. Margaret sat beside me, squeezing my hand during the hymns. You handled it with grace, she whispered. I handled it because I had no choice, I replied with a small smile. Grace just came after. After the service, the pastor approached me. Eleanor, he said, I heard about what happened. I'm glad you stood up for yourself. That kind of courage inspires others more than you realize. His words lingered with me all day. Because for the first time, I realized that maybe this story wasn't just about what was taken from me, but what I reclaimed. My voice, my dignity, my place. A few weeks later, Daniel invited me to dinner at a small Italian place in town. I've been thinking, he said as we waited for our food, I might sell the apartment. I can't afford it on my own right now. Maybe I'll move back home for a while. I smiled gently. You don't need my permission, Daniel. But if you come back, you help with the garden. He laughed softly, the first real laugh I'd heard from him in months. Deal. As the waiter set down our plates, I noticed a small silver ring still faintly marking his finger. He saw me looking and said quietly, I'll take it off when I'm ready. I nodded. Healing takes time. The next morning, I found a letter slipped under my door. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Lila's. It was short. Eleanor, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. For the house, for the lies, for what I did to Daniel. I thought I was securing a future, but all I did was destroy it. I hope you both find peace. You deserve it. Lila stood there for a long time, the letter trembling slightly in my hands. I didn't feel triumph. I felt stillness, like something that had been heavy inside me had finally settled. By the end of that month, the town had moved on to new gossip. But I hadn't. I wasn't bitter, just wiser. The house stood firm again, not just in brick and wood, but in meaning. It wasn't a symbol of possession anymore. It was a reminder that boundaries protect love. That silence can be mistaken for weakness, but it isn't. Because sometimes The quietest people carry the heaviest truths. Peace didn't come all at once. It came in small, almost invisible ways. The quiet hum of the kettle in the morning. The sound of Daniel humming in the garden as he trimmed the roses. The smell of fresh bread baking, the kind my late husband used to love. I began to find comfort again in the routines that used to feel hollow. Each day stitched me back together, piece by piece. Daniel moved back home 2 months after the court ruling. He'd sold the apartment and started working longer hours, saving for a fresh start. The first week, he was cautious, almost apologetic, like a guest in his own home. But I made sure to treat him as a son, not a stranger. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, he said, "You know, I keep thinking about how easily I let things slip away. Trust, family, everything Dad built." I looked at him, his face tired but softer now. "You were trying to build your own life." "That's not wrong. You just chose the wrong person to build it with," he sighed. Maybe I thought I needed to prove something, that I could be the man Dad was. I reached over and took his hand. "You don't need to prove anything, Daniel. Your father didn't love you because you were perfect. He loved you because you tried." He blinked hard, and for a moment I saw the little boy he used to be, chasing fireflies in the yard, laughing without worry. In time, the house felt lighter. We repaired the porch steps, planted new flowers, even painted the living room a warm cream color. Every small change was like reclaiming a piece of ourselves. Sometimes Margaret came by with her grandkids, and their laughter filled the air. The neighbors, who once whispered about the scandal, now stopped to admire the garden. Life, it seemed, had decided to move forward again. One afternoon, while cleaning out the attic, I found an old wooden box. Inside were Thomas's letters, ones he'd written to me during our early years of marriage. I hadn't opened them since he passed. The first letter began with his neat, familiar handwriting. "Ellie, if you're reading this one day, remember that home isn't the walls we build. It's the people we protect. Don't ever let anyone take that from you." I smiled through my tears. He'd been gone for years, but somehow, his words had found their way back exactly when I needed them. A few weeks later, I visited the small cafe by the river where Daniel and I used to have breakfast when he was younger. It had the same chipped mugs, the same smell of burnt coffee and cinnamon rolls. I sat there, watching people pass by, couples, families, old friends, and I realized something. I no longer felt angry. The betrayal had cut deep, yes, but it had also unearthed something stronger, the courage to speak up, to defend myself, to demand respect even when it was uncomfortable. For so long, I had thought being quiet was the same as being kind. But kindness without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender, and I was done surrendering. One morning, Daniel handed me a small envelope over breakfast. "I wanted you to be the first to know," he said. Inside was a business card, Daniel Warren, real estate consultant. "I got a job with a small agency downtown," he said proudly. "Helping families buy their first homes." I laughed softly. "So now you're helping others find what was almost taken from us," he smiled. "Guess it runs in the family." That night, as I watched him leave for an evening showing, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for what we'd regained, but for what we'd learned. Love wasn't about blind trust. It was about standing firm, even when the people you love make mistakes. It was about protecting what's right without losing what's good. Months later, I visited the courthouse again, not for a case this time, but to sign papers transferring a small portion of my property to Daniel's name. Legally this time, when I handed him the deed, he hesitated. "Mom, are you sure?" I nodded. "Your father wanted this house to be our legacy. Now it's your turn, but you'll earn it honestly." He hugged me tightly, his voice low. "I won't let you down," I smiled. "You already haven't." That night, as I sat in my favorite chair by the window, a gentle rain began to fall. Soft, cleansing, familiar. I watched the droplets trace down the glass and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Because even after everything, the lies, the pain, the loss, I was still here. Still standing, and somehow, that felt like victory enough. Life has a way of teaching you lessons you never asked for, but always needed. For me, that lesson was simple. Love and trust are precious, but they must never come at the cost of your dignity. I used to think that staying silent was the same as keeping peace. Now I know. Silence can protect others, but sometimes it destroys you. It's only when I finally spoke up, when I stood my ground, that I found peace again. Forgiveness came later. Not for her, at least not right away, but for myself. For the years I spent trying to please everyone. For the nights I questioned my worth. For the quiet way I let people take more than they gave. If you've ever had something precious stolen, your home, your trust, your voice, I want you to know this. You can take it back. Gently, firmly, with grace. You don't need to scream to be heard. You just need to stand, and when you do, the world may not apologize, but your soul will thank you. So tell me, if you were in my place, would you have fought back? Would you have chosen peace over silence? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if my story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more. Because sometimes the quietest stories are the ones that change us the most.